What's up, everyone? My name is David Lee. Welcome back to the Hawks Film Room podcast. Long time no see. I've been moving. I've been working on a lot of draft stuff, but starting to feel that itch again to somewhat hyper-focus on the Hawks content again. Of course, there's a lot of things to cover. They got absolutely blasted tonight by the Celtics. And I was in the building for this one, and three big things. The defense, abysmal. Hawks gave up the most points in a quarter they ever have. Sam Hauser attempted 23s. Jaylen Brown pretty much went for 40. And during this game, I tweeted this out. Let me read this. The Hawks score right now is pretty emblematic of just how quickly a game could spiral out of control when a team has, one, absolutely no hope containing the opponent's best score without help, and two, aren't connected enough to pass off assignments once they send that help. Now, of course, there are new players in rotation, and injuries don't help this, but even a fully healthy Boston is just so good at what Atlanta is so weak at. Offensive rebounds, turnover suppression, overall possession battle, three-point volume, switchability, physicality. So it would probably be a comfortable win even if they didn't shoot 57% from three in that first half. Another thing that really jumps out, the Celtics are a very stratified team. Right. So coming into this season, I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility for people to think, hey, maybe they might tank. Maybe they won't be as good as they were, of course, like without Tatum. And I think that for sure their ceiling isn't anywhere where they used to be. I mean, they're swapping out minimally viable bigs in a lot of ways in terms of Nemias Queta and Luka Garza for Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford and, guys like that, right? Luke Cornett. The thing is, in the NBA, right, the drop-off for bigs, you can find replacement-level guys pretty easily. And both Nemias and Luka Garza were better than they had shown in other contexts. The Celtics had a ton of continuity with their ball handlers, right? They knew who was going to be creating offense for them. They know on a nightly basis who's going to have the ball in their hands, who's going to be trusted with the majority of the shot creation load. Everyone else is fitting around them, right? It's Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Anthony Simons. Everyone else, you're going to play defense, play hard, get on the glass, shoot spot-up threes. Very simplistic, but it's very defined, right? You look at this Hawks team, especially when Dyson Daniels isn't playing, when Kristaps isn't playing, this team has had so many fluctuations on and off the court, right? But particularly in terms of how they've had to play offense. When KP's in the lineup, they're running way more pick and roll. They're not way more pick and roll, they're running way more post-ups, and they're attacking mismatch to a degree that they just don't, and they can't physically do when he's not in the lineup. When Trae Young was still on this team, they're running a ton more pick and roll with him on the floor. When he's off the floor, they're not running pick and roll that much at all. So, again, these are one of the things I want to build out as I desperately catch up on that play-by-play tracker because the ebbs and flows of this offense have been ridiculous. And now they have CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert who have different dynamics, and they're trying to reintegrate them as well. So don't be surprised that the offense – you should not be surprised that the offense looks as disjointed as it did in multiple points, not just since the CJ McCollum acquisition, but throughout this season, but particularly now as they integrate these other guys. Before we get into the film, I want to share this quote from Quin Snyder. It made me laugh in the presser. Quin said, of course, he pointed to a lot of lack of great competitiveness, urgency, all these different things, physicality. But he also said this, which I thought was funny. Contested mid-range shots without moving the ball. That's not who we are. I'm not saying it's a shot at CJ McCollum, but you know who took a lot of contested mid-range shots? It was CJ. CJ has not had the greatest start to his career as a Hawk. I think it's kind of hard to go from that situation in Washington and play in a semi-serious scenario. He was 4 for 14. A lot of non-rim twos. He went 1 for 4 on mid-range. On middies, he missed all of his threes. In his time as a Hawk, CJ is outside of that game. Well, he actually was scored relatively. Not really. The volume is there for sure. But the efficiency absolutely is not. Last 3 games, CJ McCollum for the Hawks has played 27 minutes a night. He's put up 18 points, 3.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists on 47 true shooting. Only 2 turnovers. So in total, 56 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. 11 for 17 from the free throw line, 3 for 19 from 3. Obviously, he's a better 3-point shooter than that. It's just kind of, if he still doesn't really know what he's supposed to be doing on the offense. When I walked into the building, I was walking to the Wade press conference, and I see CJ, and he didn't know what a locker room is. It's his first time in Atlanta, right? I thought Quin also said something pretty interesting. He said, this isn't a full meltdown. from his perspective, he felt like they competed, of course, really well against Golden State. They ended up running Golden State out the building. He said they ran into LA on one of their best nights of the season. I'd agree with that. I don't think LA is actually as good as their record has been. You can look at the internet rating and all these other things. So they competed until they had a bad stretch against Portland. But I do think that, these struggles are not really new to them. It's also why they lost back-to-back games to Toronto. So let's start with the defense, because I had got a question on Twitter. It was kind of like, is this a coaching thing? Is it a player thing? I'm not a subscriber to the belief that, a coach could just pull effort out of guys, or like defense is entirely schematic, right? Effort is intrinsic to a player. The reason why Boston has remained a viable defense is they brought in a bunch of guys who are fighting for something. They're at the same position, and Joe Mazzulla is willing and will do it. Will pull guys out if they're not playing hard or if they're not competing. To do that, though, you have to have the roster that allows you to do so, right? Like the Celtics have Josh Minot, they have Hugo Gonzalez, they have Jordan Walsh, they have Sam Hauser, Baylor Shireman. Well, I shouldn't have included Hauser there, but you get the point. They can swap these guys in and out, Same thing with the bigs. You've got Keita, you got Garza, you got Tillman. All of these guys are making pennies on the dollar, and they're fighting for their NBA livelihood in a lot of cases, right? Which means that Mazzulla, who's already, one of those coaches, is going to be pretty hard on guys. He can do that to his fullest extent. Quin Snyder should not have played 3-guard lineups tonight. Just no reason to, against such a great offensive rebounding team. We already had a disadvantage with Dyson off the floor and KP's off the floor and Reza, right? That should have never happened. But when you ask him, or if you would ask him, because he doesn't always get into rotations, but if you think about it in terms of who would compete more, right? There's just not a lot of options. Caleb Houston isn't a gritty guy. He's not a hustle player. Vit Krejci has sort of lost that as he's not. I don't want to say he's lost that, but he just doesn't have the facilities to do so with his frame wise. I think Keaton Wallace should be cut out the rotation. I think he comes in and he sort of hijacks the offense. He doesn't give you what you're needing in terms of competitiveness defensively, like his younger brother. But outside of Mo Gay and Asa Newell, Asa positionally isn't sound defensively. The only guy who gives them a jolt of energy and grit is Mo, but without Trey, he's deficient on offense. So like the everything's out of whack, right? And we'll talk about Jalen too, because it hasn't been good for him. But I just want to point out, when you draw these comparisons between a team like the Celtics, you can't really do so with the way the roster's set up, right? So, of course, Jalen Brownson is the fulcrum of this offense. Here they're setting up Spain, pick and roll. You have the big setting this initial screen against Jalen Johnson, and then Sam Hauser's coming up to set the back screen against Onyeka Okongwu. Now, Jalen is going to come off the screen. Sam Hauser's going to leak it. You can see CJ McCollum tells Onyeka, hey, let's switch it. You see how his arms go up. Onyeka either doesn't see it or doesn't want to switch because he doesn't think CJ can hold up here, which I don't have a problem with. They kind of shut that down pretty well, but Jalen is just floating. He has no idea where Sam Hauser is. Now, Sam ends up missing this, and then Vit gets discarded by Baylor Shireman, but this wasn't the only time where Jalen was a little bit spaced out defensively, right? Here comes Derek White. He's going to set this angle pick and roll. Nemias K is going to set that angle pick and roll. They're going to throw it to Keita. They're going to run now zoom action with that down screen and then a dribble handoff that Shireman's going to come get from Keita. Keita's going to dive here. The Hawks are going to ask the furthest person from the corner to tag. Jalen has to at least try to step down, try to slow down Keita a little bit, especially if you're going to put 2 on the ball, right? Like, this is just an immediate read. And Jalen, he's guarding the best player on the floor, but for Shireman to throw this pass, he's going to have to reverse pivot or he's going to have to get it through 2 defenders, right? Jalen needs to be here at this point. He needs to meet Keita so that Vit doesn't have to fly all the way over. Because Quin talked about this in the presser. There's multiple breakdowns, right? Like on any given possession. But where Naw is positioned here tells me that the Hawks probably did not want Vit to come over and tag all the way from over there. I've seen Naw play between the two when they have someone tag. He's sitting here at the nail, right? Which is the free throw line extended and a little bit higher up because of where Derek White is. This is also just the dilemma that Boston's going to put you in. But I can't really co-sign putting 2 on the ball against Baylor Sharp. You know, like, and especially if you are going to hedge, like hedge aggressively. And some of this is also, I'd imagine, Onyeka's doing this because CJ gets clipped a little bit and he's trailing. But this, you need to funnel him into the drop here, in my opinion. Especially if you're not going to have this sort of involvement from Jalen on the weak side. Now, to Jalen's credit, he had some better moments, but wide open 3 for Sam Hauser, this is why he had 21 attempts. You know, and this was in the beginning of the game. Like, I barely even cut up anything from later because it just got nasty. Okay, here comes a wide curl, right? Sam Hauser's going to reject it. He's going to veer. Now they're setting up that same thing. Spain leak. Initial screen. Back screen. He can leak this if he'd like. He's going to leak it. CJ's kind of just watching. He's flat-footed. Good to get his hands up here. Again, I obviously the Hawks wanted to hedge here, but where Derek White is, I don't love it. And then again, completely motionless from Jalen here. Sorry, I take that back. My bad, Jalen Johnson. This is the one where he actually showed help. It was just late, but you know, ideally you got to be here a little bit earlier because what you want to do in this scenario is force this skip pass. If anything, you don't want that ball to come to the big. Shout out Jalen though. He was able to probably get away with a little bit of a foul, and you can see that. I don't know how much the leg rooms bother him, but I really don't feel like he's been that state level rim protector. I've talked about it a lot, but now you're gonna get kind of like a horns out action here for the Celtics. Jaylen Brown's gonna pop out. Here comes that angle pick and roll. Hawks clearly want to put Onyeka at the level. They're gonna switch this. Okay, that's fine. He's gonna drive into the help. Now, I think one of my biggest pet peeves is when bigs jump on pump fakes, especially around the rim. I think that Onyeka probably feels like he doesn't have the length to contest this without jumping, which is why he gets in the air. But, I mean, just a cardinal sin, man. And it's an and one. Like, especially when you're the bigger player, you can't let this happen. And it's because he loses containment, I think. But unfortunate. I think, honestly speaking, like we've seen Onyeka sit on things like this. Right? I think he's also worried about that assignment being passed off. You see, he looks behind him here, trying to make sure everything's clear. If he was able to trust that he can get back here without having to worry about that being passed off, and also a better passer just sort of makes it pass anyways. Man, it was bad. Like this is a slice of the cake. You know, this isn't even everything. Now they're going to run a double sort of like stagger action for Anthony Simons. Mo does a good job fighting through it. He's going to step up. Now, again, they're bringing Onyeka at the level. But now you've got both bigs at the level. And they're sitting here in this hedge. Now that you've got one big recovering and one at the top of the key, you're going to see this big collapse from the Hawks defense. Okay, there we pass back off of Simons. Looks good. Then boom, here comes a guard screen. And just not enough communication here. So many times they were able to make, you see, they pass off that initial action. They defend it. And it's that last sort of like back-breaking skip pass, right? Okay, they want to put 2 on the ball. That's fine. You see, Nikhil is ready to get back out there. But that last one from Onyeka, it's a hard thing to ask for a big, but with 3 seconds on shot clock, and also like how far Mo would have to go. Like, if you're going to put 2 on the ball, everyone has to recover. It has to be an X out. As soon as you put 2 on the ball and that ball gets passed, guess what? He goes here, and Mo goes here. But there's just not that cohesion. And I think these guys are tired. I think they definitely are. It was not the most grueling road trip in terms of opponents, but like going out west and then having to play again at home within like a day of rest, and then now they got to play at 1 p.m. on MLK Day. It could be nasty yet again. But like this, as soon as Mo turns, he's got to be coming back down to the paint. Otherwise, you know, this hesitation is just enough for Onyeka to not be able to trust that he can leave Makeda. And you're just No one's there. He's gonna make that. I mean, it's really not that simple. It's really not that complicated, man. Starts with Jaylen Brown, right? When Jaylen Brown drives, the Hawks have to commit on him, but CJ does a really good job swiping down here. I think CJ actually has good hands. You know, despite what the numbers may say. And again, here's the last rotation one more time. Guys are floating around. They don't pick up assignments after that. And Jaylen wants to get out and run. And priorities here, man. You gotta in a scramble drill, you gotta find the nearest man to you, and this is gonna be against. I don't want to be too harsh on them because they got new guys on the floor. You know, if V's gonna go here, then Asa goes here. Kispert tries to pick up the big, and then Jaylen gets him. Jaylen doesn't really get anyone until it's the furthest pass away, right? Here, this needs to be Asa. And, you know, I got to give Jaylen props for recognizing it. It's just, you know, it wasn't on him here. Sometimes guys get too locked in on their assignment. But, you know, it's stuff like this, man. This is why they got blown out so bad. Ah. Dang. Okay. This one thing let's talk about this. The Jalen Johnson, I saw someone tweet out Jalen Johnson's All-Star trial has run out. It's not fair to say. Another guy that I think has been not just overextended, but definitely he's tired from what he's had to do. But the one reason I could definitely tell you he's tired is that he's making the type of mental mistakes he wasn't making early in the season. And that's especially like when he's losing track of defenders or both in the open floor and in the half court. This play, from my vantage point, I'm sitting over here, you know, like up in the media. Jalen, this has to be a pass. This has to be a kick out to Luke Kennard. It just has to. And again, these are the type of things he was moving. It's like knowing, you know, Luke is going to keep moving. You got to be aware of where he is. I don't think he ever sees him. Okay, that's one thing. Then we get to the turnovers. Jalen had a lot, some pretty egregious ones in this game. They're going to get this ghost screen from Nikhil. He was not very aware of the help. It's been kind of a problem. And again, I think this is a sign of exhaustion. It's when you start making dumb mistakes or losing the mental capacity to account for everyone on the floor. And the Celtics were very aware of that. It wasn't just on steals, but also they would collapse on his drives and get it high point his shots at his apex. Sometimes because the Hawks weren't, you know, lifting at the right times, and we'll take a look at some of those. But yeah, it's not entirely on him, but it's been a problem. Now the Hawks are actually able to keep the Celtics off the glass, but that's only because the Celtics were making every shot because they were open. Right? I think at the halftime they only had 2 offensive rebounds. This is the 7th best offensive rebounding team in the league, but they're also the second best team in avoiding turnovers because they take so many threes, right? And the Hawks kind of need turnovers to have a viable offense. And if they play a team that doesn't turn the ball over, has a physical advantage, and has a shooting advantage, they're going to lose. It's not an excuse to lose this badly, but this is the type of stuff, right? Here, I think the Hawks kind of just have like some issues attacking mismatches, again, without KP. And when this ball finds Jalen Johnson, like knowing where the defense is, you kind of, and I think some of this is where Veit throws the ball and also where Jalen posts up. But like, if it's going to be a seal, you got to attack immediately, right? And he doesn't. You've got to, if you're going to catch, you got to spin back this way, or you have to just elevate over him. But what he ends up doing, you're turning into where the help is. Now you've got, how many is this? 4 Celtics touching paint or about to touch paint. And he does a good job of actually not turning that into a turnover, but the Hawks missed an opportunity to hunt a mismatch and they get bailed out with a Veit 3. I think this is this is a foul. Again, look at how much of an emphasis it was for the Celtics to dig on Jalen's handle at the nail. And this is kind of what this ended up being called a foul, but this is what I mean with like the rear view contest. I think this was definitely on the scouting report. The Celtics were pretty intentional about this. Here's the other one I was talking about. Sam Hauser actually gets him here. Jalen likes to do a hanging floater, and anytime if you get to it, you would see the Celtics players coming from behind to try and block it. So he's going to throw this and chase it for this handoff from Onyeka. And they're going to get back to a screen again. And when Veit decides to dive here on this drive, it leaves, again, that floating shot wide open for Hauser to come and take it. Now, the best sort of principles when a guy drives the ball is to move in a wheel fashion, right? And a lot of times this will look like he will go this way, and then Veit will go this way, and then you might have someone bump down. I would argue with the spacing here, it might have been better for guys to try and lift. Because of how intentional the Celtics had been about digging his handle. And honestly, Hauser is so keyed in on him, it probably wouldn't even matter if Veit lifted, but this drive is kind of dead in the water just based off where the spacing is, right? And if Veit was going to cut or if the keel was going to lift, it had to be a little bit earlier, like as soon as that screen was set. Because they kind of remain static, it's tough. It's tough. And I think we're seeing some of the difficulties to be the number one guy. This is kind of what it's going to be, man. Like, it's not going to be cupcakes and rainbows. We know that for sure. And I did not mean to add that clip. Sorry about that. But here's the last one. This turnover in transition. Again, this is just like a mental mistake, not keeping account of where guys are. Doesn't seem like guys are talking. I don't see Veit saying. I see Veit asking for the ball, but I can't really tell if Veit is telling him that Derek is coming. Actually, it does look like it. But it's stuff like this. Again, I think this is a tiredness signal as opposed to like an inability to handle the ball. Let's finish this off by looking at some stuff with CJ and Kispert. I think Kispert has definitely looked a little bit more conducive to the Hawks system. More than anything, I think, generally speaking, the Hawks need to be, experiment as much as possible with these guys while they have them. I am not a proponent of keeping CJ long term. I wasn't before he started wearing a Hawks jersey, but I think he's kind of diametrically opposed to not just what Quin wants to do, but to the type of offense that I think the Hawks would want to run through a guy like Dyson and Jalen. I don't think the mid-range is always bad. I'm not one of those guys, but this is exactly the type of stuff that probably got Quin upset. Let's see if you can see his reaction here. I mean, he makes that. I remember he made this shot. It doesn't look like Quin had anything adverse about that. But I think a lot about what he said in the presser in terms of just so here we get that weight curl action. Nikhil kind of gets it deflected. He's going to drive baseline here. Again, look at the help. Look how well timed it. Like, Boston's a machine. Let me just call it what it is. They're a machine. Very well timed help by Sam Hauser. They'd use that baseline to trap Nikhil. He's still able to get it to Onyeka. And ends up being a grenade that finds CJ. Man, you can not like Boston all you want, but they play really great team basketball. Here's that 77 action. CJ's gonna run it. And then we see this drive from Onyeka, who I think, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but Onyeka's grown so much as a driver that I'd really want to be. I'm still very much so intrigued into leaning more into both him and Jalen as drivers more, which means you probably have to play them with another big. I don't think it's the craziest thing to say that you could go, him, Asa, Mo, and sort of see what that looks like on the front court, because Onyeka is driving on 11% of his possession. He's at 0.98, and really closer to 1.07 based off if he drives right or left. And then Jalen's driving is at, I'm pulling it up. He's driving on 13% of his possessions, and he's at about 0.967. But again, his numbers are better versus on if he's driving left or right as opposed to straight. And so I think both these guys are generating points at an above league average rate when they're above a league average half-court offensive possessions rate when they're driving the ball. and they've both grown as live dribble passes. And we even see here when Jacobs pulls out this, kind of funky pump fake, which actually I wanted to watch this back again because I could not tell if he traveled. There's 1, 2. He might have shuffled him. Ooh, let's gather 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think so. I think that's clean. But that's kind of my point, right? Especially as he's upped his 3-point volume and the passing ability. He's able to fake both Derek White and Baylor Shireman and then float it over Cato. So I think I've seen enough to warrant that experimentation, especially like if the alternative is 3 guards, like why not? Because it hasn't been working. And another good example though of how good CJ's hands are here. He just takes that away from Jaylen Brown. And the Hawks going the other way. I think on this play, yeah, CJ's going to get us in the keel for this transition finish. This was really beautiful to watch in person. Low gather to move the ball in midair around both defenders and finish in transition like that. It's not just the ambidextrous nature, but just the way he's able to manipulate the ball in midair is really, really stunning. And I think the keel is, I really can't say enough about him. He's really impressed me offensively. Yeah, I can imagine this probably made Quin's eyes twitch a little bit too. Like, just shoot the 3. Made it a tougher shot for no reason. Let's watch Quin here. He's got such a good poker face. I would be losing my mind. Just take that dribble, or even if you're worried about the closeout, sidestep it, or take that shot here, snaking it and then turning it into a contested midi. Not the best. I think this one ends up getting blocked. So Jaylen Brown hits the side of the backboard. Hawks are going to be pushing in semi-transition. They're going to get into a pick and roll here. Here comes Jaylen. He's going to ghost it. And then, kind of just like no action, no movement. Bad shot. They're going to leave Jordan Walsh here. Mohamed Gay clears it. Here comes CJ bringing the ball up. CJ, then Keen's going to kick it back, I believe, after he tries to probe. Reset to CJ. He tries to draw a foul and then ends up getting that foul there. Dang, it's a lot of CJ. Kesper he's ran a lot more with the second unit. I think in some ways he looked better in his home debut, but we'll get to him shortly. So CJ is going to skip that to Mo. Possession's dead. Again, the offense is going to be disjointed while these guys are trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. And that was a pretty good example of how bad it can look. Now here, Celtics are going to involve. At this point, the Hawks kind of technically have 3 guards on the floor, but Kispert and Nikhil are definitely, like, just size-wise better alternatives than someone like a Keaton Kennard, Krejci. Andeka is going to have to step up here because Mo gets stuck on the screen. They're going to find Garza. Garza puts it in and 1. And this starts because you have to guard Jaylen Brown with Mohamed Gay, so you don't have any weak side rim protection. And then the Celtics are going to smartly involve Onyeka in this screen in action as well, which keeps both bigs occupied. And just again with the size stuff, which is why you might want to consider it. I don't think you could do like throw an Asa in here, but this is why someone like Reza Shea is so important, because he at least has that size on the backside, even if he isn't going to always play at 6'10". But it's certainly different than if it's. I think it's Kispert who ends up picking him up here. Certainly different if it's Zach here. I think this is going to end up being a blocked attempt from Corey Kispert here. So again, that sort of ghost screen action where Nikhil likes to do, where he'll pass and then he'll ghost it. And good hands by Simons. Kispert competes though, and he's able to knock it in on that offensive rebound. Here, the Hawks going to force a miss off that Simons pull-up 3, semi-transition, throw it ahead to Kispert. He's going to take it from deep. Fine enough with me. I would prefer, if you're going to get a 3 up, definitely get it up in transition as opposed to static scenario. Not a big fan of this play that the Hawks run. Is basically staying pick and roll, but more condensed. Doesn't really feel like it always generates the best looks. And then Kispert ends up drawing a foul here. I don't think he would have shot this if he didn't see how out of control Simons was, and then he's able to draw that contact. But I mean, the one thing that the Hawks definitely have in spades now is shooting, right? You know, they might not be defense, might not be physicality, might not be playmaking, but they do have a lot of proven shooters coming off the bench now. And between McCollum, when his shot comes back, and Kennard and Krejci and Kispert, like they should at least keep opposing benches honest. And this is big for the Hawks because they like to run this like kind of like flip sort of action and transition, and having trailing guys, you know, outside of KP, who was a big guy for them doing that, or still is a big guy. And obviously, he isn't always on the floor as much. So good to have someone like Kispert who's willing to take those. Again, here's that ghost. CJ is going to drive and get himself in trouble. I couldn't really tell you where this pass was supposed to go. Even if that was supposed to be a wraparound, he got himself into trouble here. That's a really hard passing angle to get to Krejci. Yes, here goes. They're gonna miss that above the break three. Jalen Johnson's gonna grab the rebound. We'll probably only do the second half, man. The third quarter was hard watch. Much better job moving the ball around here in semi-transition though. So Kispert drives it. He draws two, gets Hugo's attention, then they skip it again, and then CJ is able to get a decent look off that he ends up airballing. I think they're going to end up they ended up blocking Jaylen Brown here, though, on this handoff. Again, CJ's hands are really good for, I mean, not good enough to excuse the defensive stuff, but good enough to say, hey, he's not going to be, I don't know if I'd say the worst defender in the league, but definitely one of the more detrimental. Man, it was a barrage. And honestly, watching it in person, I did not realize Hauser had 30 into the fourth quarter. Just because it felt like anyone was getting anything they wanted. There's always going to be positives in every game, right? And I think that you see the ball, when you see the ball pop like this, even if it's, hey, ideally, your center would be able to, finish that, being able to attack the rotation. And Hugo works so hard, man. He still almost got a piece of that. And for those who aren't aware, Hugo has ridiculously sized hands, like massive hands. And you see how quickly these windows close, though, against a disciplined defense. And, I think a lot of the Hawks' struggles will be like not being able to get to the low-hanging fruit and having to generate tougher looks against good defenses. So we'll see. We'll see what this looks like in a couple weeks. But ideally you'd want to turn this overplay into a rim attempt. Again, you see how seamlessly Celtics pass off assignments, so there's not really a chance to really kick that back out. And Derek White's reputation as a rim protector probably deters that CJ's desire to try to get that all the way to the rim. But let's take another look at a pick and roll possession. He's going to reject it. Or Nick is slipping. This needs to be a skip. Even with the way that Boston's rotating, at the very least, this is going to probably be a pretty decent look for Jalen Johnson on a spot up three. This is just a really tough shot, and really, really tough. Again, hopefully as CJ gets more settled, we see less of this. But you see how often the Hawks are taking the ball out the basket? Like every time these clips have started, it's been a Celtics player jogging back. The kill on the island against Hugo. Good backdoor from CJ here, though. Not being organized. Just a sort of read and react. And the man didn't even know what the locker room was, man. Jalen's going to get into an ISO. I think the Hawks definitely, of course, they're going to miss Dyson Daniels in a game like this where they just can't have someone they can stick on Jalen, but it's tough, man, because I think for a large part of the game, they were using Jalen to defend Jalen, which means that, that weak side presence isn't there, and you run into all sorts of other issues. This turns into a turnover. I think and Sam was audacious, man. He was taking all types of stuff. This one was maybe his magnum opus from tonight's game, like to get both feet behind the three-point line and fire at the same time as you're relocating yourself for three off of a steal. Ridiculous player. Ridiculous team, quite honestly. And I don't blame people who feel pretty pessimistic about the Hawks this season. I said at the time of the trade, not on this platform, but overall, the Hawks did not get better when they made this trade. They gave themselves a different path forward. In the draft, team construction roster wise. But I think that a lot of these things we'll have to see the fruits of their labor, right? Like it's going to be impossible to evaluate this roster as it was going to be impossible with Trey, just because guys are always injured. I just hope nothing hasty is coming. Whether it's AD or anything like that, I just don't think this team is anywhere close to competing. And their best bet at this point, with already making that trade for Trey or trading away Trey, is to see what you can do in the draft. Like, make your decision after the draft comes around and kind of learn from your not mistake with I guess your process with Reza Shea, because I think that so much of the motivating factor behind Reza Shea had to be the fact that he played so well with Trey theoretically. But if there was any question at that point, and again, there was a different regime at that time, but if there was any question that you didn't think there was going to be a viable chance to build around Trey for the foreseeable future, then that was the incorrect process, right? Because now this is a roster of guys that remain reliant on a playmaker that no longer have that playmaker on the roster. CJ's more of a scoring tilted guy. Jalen's still figuring things out. He doesn't quite have the ability to blend the scoring and the playmaking in the half court consistently as the solo initiator, right? So all these guys have these questions offensively. They don't have someone to orchestrate for them, and they don't have someone to draw that attention when KP's off the floor. So this is going to be a really tough job, I think, not just for ONC, but for fans to really figure out how they feel about this team. And the only thing I would say, and the approach that I'm going to take is, just let the sample size grow. Ideally, guys get healthy and we get to see what it looks like. But, make no mistake, this is not a good defensive roster. It's not a very conducive roster to winning in general because of the vulnerabilities when guys go out. And this goes for any team in the NBA, of course. Like, if you're going to be missing your 20-point per game scorer, your best rim protector, your best ball handler and playmaker, reliable dribble playmaker and defender, and your only wing who has functional size, even if he doesn't have functional length and strength, you're going to have nights like these, right? And I do wonder, like, especially with the big position, like, just what exactly was the prognosis coming into the season? Because I thought, of course, taking Asa was, I think, insurance for someone like Onyeka and KP. But they probably should have added another big, and Dante was another guy who's injury prone. And you see a team like Boston, get Boucher, Tillman, Keita, and Garza in one offseason and get viable production from them. But again, a lot of that is in that same hierarchy that's very, very determined and rigid, right? Those guys would probably be overextended in their role in Atlanta. So I think there's lessons to learn from a game like this. I think there's lessons to learn from the season overall. But I always just say, let the sample size continue to grow. Hope for a good draft pick. I was being lazy and did not change the background for this particular video, but this is my sort of a setup for the draft podcast I'm doing with Ahmed at Slip the Screen. It's called The Fifth Factor Podcast. It's linked in my link tree. You can find me on Substack doing stuff. I'm still working on my website. Got a lot of different feature requests, so we'll get those out for people as well. And yeah, man, I hope you all enjoyed. Apologies for my hiatus, but we'll be back in one capacity or the other. Y'all be safe.